Смотри, в этом доме тоже свет погас.
Strange happened in the sky in Turkey before the earthquake.
Saatine dikkat 04.08 yani tam da deprem anı. Aynı anda Düzce'nin değişik yerleri ve Zonguldak'ta da benzer görüntüler kayıt altına alındı. Sarsıntıyla beraber bir top ışık hüzmesi belirdi. İşte böyle ve kayboldu. Daha önce başka depremlerde de benzer görüntüler kaydedilmişti, hatırlatın.
Powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake rocked southern Turkey and neighboring Syria earlier. At least 43 aftershocks have occurred with a magnitude of 4.3 or more. The quake struck 23 kilometers east of Nadaihin in Gaziantep province. The quake was at a depth of 24.1 kilometers. A strong shock of magnitude 7.5 flight after a devastating earthquake. This aftershock was extremely shallow, only 10 kilometers deep, which wasn't the shaking felt.
Evet, hepsi sağlamdı, hepsi.
Entire city blocks were flattened by the quake. Metal rods were strewn across the streets and vehicles toppled over.
Allah'ım sen yardım eyle. Yüce Rabbim bizlere yardım eyle ya Rabbi.
More than 1,000 high-rise buildings were destroyed.
Sırastan açtım, gittim, giyindim, çıktım. Çok
At least 120 aftershocks have occurred following powerful earthquake in southern Turkey.
Allah'ım ne olur yardım et Allah'ım.
3 of the aftershocks measured 6.0 or greater. That struck 95 kilometers north of the epicenter of the morning's main quake.
Allahu Ekber.
Depremin tam merkezi. Karşıda evler yıkık vaziyette.
The aftershocks stretch for more than 300 kilometers along the fault zone.
Acayip bir şekilde sarsılmasıyla deprem olduğunu anladık. Geri döndük tekrardan yıkılan. Allah'ım sen yardım eyle. Yüce Rabbim bizlere yardım eyle ya Rabbi.
The port of Iskenderun in southern Turkey was damaged.
Allah'ım sen bizlere yardım eyle. Allah'ım sen bize yardım eyle. Allah'ım yardım et. Eyle ya Rabbi. Allah'ım sen
Some
bizlere
parts
yardım
of
eyle.
the port's dock collapsed.
Allah'ım sen yardım et Allah'ım. Hindistan'ın yarısı gitmiş.
Elsewhere, cracks formed on the runways of some airports in the earthquake zone.
Her yer yıkıldı Elbistan'da. Her yer.
Many countries have already begun to provide humanitarian assistance.
Antakya burası şu an. Yıkım her yere vurmuş. Ayakta bina yok.
Rescues are still working to free people trapped under the rubble.
Yo.
More than 1,000 high-rise buildings were destroyed.
Allah'ım sen yardım eyle. Allah'ım sen yardım eyle. Allah'ım sen yardım eyle ya Rabbi. Sen yardım eyle ya Rabbi. Rabbim sen yardım eyle. Allah'ım sen yardım eyle.
Metal rods were strewn across the streets and vehicles toppled over.
Damage almost unimaginable. Two powerful earthquakes struck Turkey and neighboring Syria. 10,000 people are feared dead. Watch as aftershocks from the 7.8 quake bring down an entire apartment building. People run for their lives.
Telefonlara sar.
This reporter is doing a live shot when a strong aftershock hits. He flees with everyone, and when the cameraman turns around, you can see what a close call it was. Then the reporter runs back to help a family emerging from the debris. He grabs a child in his arms and tries to comfort her. Cameras caught another building collapsing. Drone footage shows the scale of the devastation. A desperate search is underway to find victims buried alive. Closer to home, a much smaller earthquake measuring 3.8 on the Richter scale was felt in Buffalo, New York this morning. Nerves were already frayed in the city that's been through so much recently, including this historic blizzard that left 47 people dead. The Buffalo quake did not do any serious damage. Could the two earthquakes be related?
The Buffalo event was many hours later, and so in that sense, I think the chances are very low that the Buffalo event really had much to do with that far event in Turkey.
Mr. President, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
Remarks the President to the National Academy of Science from Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C., October 22, 1963.
And third, there is the atmosphere itself, the atmosphere in which we live and breathe and which makes life on this planet possible. Scientists have studied the atmosphere for many decades, but its problems continue to defy us. The reasons for our limited progress are obvious. Weather cannot be easily reproduced and observed in the laboratory. It must therefore be studied in all of its violence wherever it has its way. Here is an oceanography. New scientific tools have become available with modern computers, rockets, and satellites. The time is ripe to harness a variety of disciplines for a concerted attack. And even more than oceanography, the atmospheric sciences require worldwide observation and hence international cooperation. Some of our most successful international efforts have involved the study of the atmosphere. We all know that the World Meteorological Organization has been effective in this field. It is now developing a worldwide weather system to which nations the world over can make their contribution. Such cooperative undertakings can challenge the world's best efforts for decades to come. And fourth, I would mention a problem which I know has greatly concerned many of you. That is our responsibility to control the effects of our own scientific experiments. For as science investigates the natural environment, it also modifies it. And that modification may have incalculable consequences for evil as well as for good. In the past, the problem of conservation has been mainly the problem of human waste, of natural resources, of their destruction. But science has the power for the first time in history now to undertake experiments with premeditation which can irreversibly alter our biological and physical environment on a global scale. The problem is difficult because it is hard to know in advance whether the cumulative effects of a particular experiment will help or harm mankind. In the case of nuclear testing, the world is satisfied that radioactive contamination involves unnecessary risks, and we are all heartened that more than 100 nations have joined to outlaw testing in environments where the effects most directly threaten mankind. In other fields, we may be less sure. We must, for example, balance the gains of weather modification against the hazards of protracted drought or storm. The government has the clear responsibility to weigh the importance of large-scale experiments to the advance of knowledge or to national security against the possibility of adverse and destructive effects. The scientific community must assist the government in arriving at rational judgments and interpreting these issues to the public. To deal with this problem, we have worked out formal procedures within the government to assure expert review before potentially risky experiments are undertaken. And we will make every effort to publish the data needed to permit open examination and discussion of proposed experiments by the scientific community before they are authorized. If science is to press ahead in the four fields that I have mentioned, if it is to continue to grow in effectiveness and productivity, our society must provide scientific inquiry the necessary means of sustenance. We must, in short, support it. Military and space needs, for example, offer little justification for much work in what Joseph Henry called abstract science. Though such fundamental inquiry is essential to the future technological vitality of industry and government alike, it is usually more difficult to comprehend than applied activity, and as a consequence, often seems harder to justify to the Congress, to the executive branch, and to the people. But if basic research is to be properly regarded, it must be better understood. I ask you to reflect on this problem and on the means by which in the years to come our society can assure continuing backing to fundamental research in the life sciences, the physical sciences, the social sciences, on natural resources, on agriculture, on protection against pollution and erosion. Together, the scientific community, the government, industry, and education must work out the way to nourish American science in all its power and vitality. Even this year, we have already seen in the first actions of the House of Representatives some failure of support for important areas of research which must depend on the national government. I'm hopeful that the Senate of the United States will restore these funds. What it needs, of course, is a wider understanding by the country as a whole of the value of this work, which has been so sustained by so many of you. I would not close, however, on a gloomy note, for ours is a century of scientific conquest and scientific triumph. If scientific discovery has not been an unalloyed blessing, if it has only conferred on mankind the power not only to create, but also to annihilate, it has at the same time provided humanity with a supreme challenge and a supreme testing. If the challenge and the testing are too much for humanity, then we're all doomed. But I believe that the future can be bright, and I believe it can be certain. Man is still the master of his own fate, and I believe that the power of science and the responsibility of science have offered mankind a new opportunity, not only for intellectual growth, but for moral discipline, not only for the acquisition of knowledge, but for the strengthening of our nerve and our will. We are bound to grope for a time as we grapple with problems without precedent in human history. But wisdom is the child of experience. In the years since man unlocked the power stored within the atom, the world has made progress, halting but effective, towards bringing that power under human control.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world. And ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
And fourth, I would mention a problem which I know has greatly concerned many of you. That is our responsibility to control the effects of our own scientific experiments. For as science investigates the natural environment, it also modifies it. And that modification may have incalculable consequences for evil as well as for good.
Tropical storm Harvey is pummeling southern
Live
Texas.
here in Houston, where Harvey's rains keep coming.
It's not the initial impact, but the flooding.
Record-shattering rain, massive flooding, families stranded.
Waters keep rising.
This is just the beginning.
Hi, if anybody's out there and can hear us, please help.
I need a rescue. These are 3 kids, no food or water.
Do we have anyone in the Friendship area?
Where's that Humble address at? What's the Humble address where they're trying to let the boats get in?
There's been a report of another 5 foot of water about to pour out of Baker Dam.
I-10 in Normandy, we need help. Families are going under with the current.
Need strong
the boats are capsizing.
I-10 in Normandy, families are on these boats.
They need boats out there.
They said a white truck went under the water. So and I'm like, well, it can't be him because he headed to my house. Also, I kept calling his wife, dialing 911, and no response. I kept calling him, no response.
Hi, ma'am. This is Texas Game Warden Carmen Rickle. It's my understanding that you guys have called to be evacuated from your residence. Is that correct? Do you know the condition of the water around the house?
I don't know.
Stand by. We're going to try to get somebody out there to help you.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive, The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other geoengineering initiatives.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo-jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops, and if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine?
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting. Professor Michio Kaku, thank you so much.
Vamos a ver esa playa.
Европейскими центральными банками, которые в 2008-2009 годах реализовали лишь 155 тонн металла при квоте 500 тонн. С начала года золото подорожало уже на 18%, а с сентября прошлого года.
what happened to me when I saw
It's like something you'd see in a video game. On Mario.
There we go. I got it.
You filming it?
Yeah, baby.
Is that weird looking or what? Looks like I punched a hole in that cloud.
It looks like a tornado is coming down on the side.
Of course, the expressway is so bouncy.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. It's beautiful.
Jesus said, but the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven, and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3 says, Sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Notice how the destruction is sudden, and it comes from above. That's a perfect description of a hypersonic atomic bomb. And amazingly, the Greek word for our moment of rapture is atomos. The Bible says the Lord will gather his wheat into the garner, but burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. And Jesus said, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And the Greek word for powers is dunamis, from where we get the word dynamite. And the word for heaven is uranus, from where we get the word uranium. When Elijah was taken up into heaven by a whirlwind, there appeared chariots of fire, and God requires that which is past. So when God says the day cometh, they shall burn as an oven, and they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet, it's for one reason only. We're going to be in the clouds!